right. We are live here. Deep Space Nine at 9-ish. I'm your host, Dune Mater, Dave Mater, Jeff Mater. It's all one. Let's talk about season 4, episode 17, Ascension. I'm joined as always by my brother Dave Mater and Bajoran worker Kevin Millard. He's without his
He is not of Bajor.
Not of Bajor.
linear. He is limited.
Yes.
Yes, we are here to talk a little bit about Cisco. Kind of, I don't really want to be the emissary, but actually I do because you suck. And at the same time, O'Brien would rather hang out with Bashir than his wife. But that's okay because his wife's okay with it at the end of the episode. But we're going to get into that. Keiko kind of realizes O'Brien's a big job and likes to go play dress up with Julian. Okay. Dave.
Yes.
Did I break down the episode? Was that the gist?
Yeah, your microphone just sounds very like broken, Jeff. Like what's going on?
I don't know.
Are you hearing that too, Jeff?
Yeah.
Does that sound better now?
Let's get it a little bit.
Oh, no.
What did you do?
I didn't do anything.
Then nothing happened.
Does it sound better now or no?
It's the will of the prophets.
It's the will of the prophets. If you followed your Tajara, perhaps it would sound better.
The jars are
Okay.
bullshit.
Now I can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's perfect.
Okay, we're better now. Should we redo the intro?
No. It would be hard to listen to for the whole time. So
I feel like I'm that old guy that killed a guy in this episode and was totally fine about it. You know, I'm just like, what? I killed a guy. What? Cisco's like, get him out of here. It's kind of the most ridiculous moment in this episode. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk a little bit about the Bajorans here. And because we have to. Because we want to, but because we have to. Dave.
Yep.
Do you enjoy the Dajaras of it all? Do you enjoy the Bajorans worshiping Cisco, him being uncomfortable with it, but then him being kind of like, you know what? I am the Cisco. Screw all you.
I'd have to say no. I'd have to say I do. This is maybe like everything that I like about this episode has nothing. Well, I think it's an important episode for Cisco and sort of what the rest of the series is. And so, we've talked about this in these other episodes that really lean into not just Bajor, but even like the spiritual religious aspects of Bajor and how it kind of really drives their society. And, so as much as I know it's important, it's not necessarily a great rewatch. I think that, what do I think? I think that the most entertaining parts of this episode have to do with O'Brien and Bashir. The B plot actually is the fun part and the thing that I really enjoyed rewatching, and everything I'm left like watching this A plot line with Cisco and Kira and this other guest guy, this Akoram Lon guy.
You no longer follow your Dajaras?
You no longer follow your Dajaras? How could you? It just makes me think kind of less of the Bajorans.
Yeah, they suck.
Well, they're kind of like they're not a very advanced people, if you ask me. For a civilization that's been around for tens of thousands of years, and even in the at least not modern sense, 9,000 years.
What do you mean by advanced?
Well, they're very hung up on their like, I don't know. Like, I think that the fact that this guy like this guy shows up and he's like, oh, I was the first to find the wormhole, so therefore I'm the emissary, and like it kind of throws their whole society into chaos.
Yeah, it's the best scene in this episode for me is Odo going, it's kind of a contradiction here, Kira. And she's like, no, it's not. It's because when you believe, it doesn't matter, okay? And Odo's like, but it does, because it's wrong. And
she's like, have you seen Enterprise? I got faith at the heart.
Oh, God.
That's basically what she says. Yeah. Like she says, it's been a long time getting from here to there. And now I'm willing to go over there for no reason whatsoever. Well, there's a
because
reason, but it's a bad reason.
Well, yeah, because she obviously like understands like for instance, Kai Wynn is bad, even though she's like basically the Pope, right, for the Bajorans. So she can see like that maybe not everyone has the answers, but you know, like,
I don't know. I was listening to a podcast earlier today. It was like the Ricky Gervais and Russell Brand, and they were talking a lot about God and atheism, right? And they're like, no, there is no single human being that literally has absolute proof that God exists, right? And if they did, like scientifically, and somebody could prove to you God exists scientifically, like Ricky Gervais was like, I would believe them. In this universe of D9, the Bajorans literally have evidence, absolutely physical proof that their gods exist. And I do think that screws them up, like, and their beliefs. I think that like, imagine the Catholics found out, yep, Jesus did 100% exist. He definitely
came back from the dead.
Came back from the dead, and we absolutely know it for a fact. It's not like a story. It's a complete 100% provable fact, you know? And right now, it's just a story. Like, let's face it. Like, all the religions are just a story, you know, in human history. And we don't have any absolute evidence for them, you know? But they do.
They have orbs, too.
They have orbs.
The best thing about that, though, is the Bajorans is that the prophets don't see themselves as gods. I'm sure, like they don't seem to.
I think they just look at themselves as Bajorans. They're like, we are Bajor. We are, you know, these aliens of Bajor are primitive, and we are more sophisticated. Basically, they just look at them. They have themselves as more advanced, right?
Yeah, I think they look at themselves kind of like the caretaker looked at the Okampa, right? Like that. You know, we're kind of like caretakers. Overseers, but not. I don't think they really want to be worshipped. I don't think that, like, you know, like how much you pray to them is necessarily what's important to them. It's just that they have a vested interest in seeing the Bajorans sort of thrive and succeed because they have this long history with them. But on the other hand, they're non-linear and they kind of know the end of the story. Yeah. And so I also find the prophets to be sort of like this really curious group of aliens, you know, too, because they're what drives them and what they go about is
they say they're non-linear, and I do believe them, but I don't think they absolutely know 100% the end of the story. I think it's a kind of like it's a moving wave, and like some pebbles get thrown in that pool and change it. You know, people do have decisions that can alter their perception of their time. Which, you know, right now it's like, yes, you're right. They can see the future and the past and now all at once, but those are not written. Those are not determined. I don't think 100% within their mindset. I don't think so anyway. They allow people to make decisions.
I guess, yes, they do. They believe in free will, which is also kind of what the aspect of this episode is, because, you know, this guy shows up and says, well, you don't follow the Dajaras anymore. And therefore, you know, if you were like, it seems like, they had a very strict Kira explains it in the episode. They had a very strict caste system as recently as 200 years ago. Yeah. You know, this is before their gods were proven to exist. I guess they had the orbs, which I guess was more of their given thing, but like it was more legend for them too. And so like for a spacefaring race, that's what I was kind of getting at, that that their culture is pretty restricted, right? You know, that they were saying, well, you know, this, not only do you have to like take a job based on who you are, but it was like, you know, at the Replimat where the woman's like, well, I'm a lower caste and you're a higher caste, and therefore I have to give up my seat to you. And then they gave this all up when they drove out the Cardassians, were told, which was as recently, you know, as 50 years ago, they gave this up. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's not like no one was rushing to go back to it. Like the Bajorans are longer lived than humans. And they're, you know, as far as we understand, and, you know, like, there was the judge in that episode with Dax, and she's like, I'm well over 100, and she doesn't look like what a human woman would look like at 100. So I get the impression Bajorans are a little bit longer lived than humans. And therefore, like there was no one clamoring to this was never brought up before now, and it's never really talked about again either, you know?
It's a kind of like, you're right. It's an episode for Cisco to get to a point where it's like, I'm good with being the emissary now. You know what? I was uncomfortable at the beginning of the episode, but now I'm willing to go do blessings at the end of the episode.
It's also kind of like imagine say an American from 200 years ago coming to the future and going, "What do you mean you don't have slaves anymore?"
Yeah, what do you mean you don't go to church every Sunday and everybody doesn't follow the Christian dogma of the day, and then everybody going, you know what? He's right. The Bible says that this guy was going to come back, and we were all idiots for not believing it.
Like, imagine like George Washington showed up all of a sudden, right? I guess, or somebody like that, like someone who would be revered from history,
like Lincoln or something. Yeah, someone like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and bringing this up, but then I think my main issue in this episode is not even Cisco. I get where he's coming from, because I think that in the writers' room they were saying to themselves, okay, we want Cisco to maybe start to embrace his role as emissary, but he's a Starfleet officer and he's not going to do that easily. So what is it going to take for him to do it? And I think they said, okay, well, what if there was like this challenger to his position who was taking Bajor in the wrong position, et cetera, et cetera.
They had to find a way to put his mission in jeopardy.
Yes.
He couldn't fail his mission.
He couldn't fail his mission, and he I think he sees that Bajor's going down the wrong path, and he does care about these people. So I guess, but my main disappointment in this episode is with Kira, because of the I think that just she disappoints me in this episode quite frankly.
Yeah. Why did she disappoint you, Dave?
Because her faith is important to her. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, she shows that she's like, she can be secular, she can be objective. She calls Cisco captain. She doesn't call him emissary. She calls it the wormhole. She doesn't call it the celestial temple every time. So she understands that there's sort of like a separation between church and state, because she's supposed to be a fucking professional. She's a professional soldier. She's a major in the Bajoran militia. She also has this non-religious role to her life. And so
but that's like you're right. Like, I understand what you're saying, but she comes to a crossroads in this episode, Dave, where she has to decide between being a professional, a soldier, or being religious and following her people's dogma. And she chooses that. She chooses her religious dogma. And that's
my disappointment.
Why? Because that's what, because it's wrong? Is that what you think? Like, do you think that's the wrong choice?
Well, her having faith always seems to lead her down the wrong path, doing the wrong things.
Yeah.
I agree. Yes, it does. But that, I don't begrudge her for making those decisions. I don't. I think you're right. I could see the disappointment. I understand what you're saying. But this happens a lot with people in the real world, where they make decisions based off religious beliefs that a lot of people would go, really? You're going to throw all this away because you believe in something that is untangible, basically. And people often go, well, what are you doing? And, but it's like a calling. Like, she mentions it, like, in this episode, like it's a faith. It's a thing that if you can't explain it, but you just have it. It's just, you innately believe it, basically, is her point. I think I agree with you, Dave. I think it's a lot of brainwashing, and it's a lot of upbringing that kind of conditions you to think this way. But I also think it's kind of like being in love, or like being religious for some people is that feeling of, I don't know, energy or love or devotion, I guess would be a good word, toward something that is bigger than themselves. And people really get addicted to that and really, I think, fall in love with it.
I understand. I understand that she's religious, and that it matters to her, and this is confusing. Her boyfriend is First Minister Shakar, too. Who is not following his Dajara. He's supposed to be a farmer, but no, he went into politics, right? And that even comes up here, And so, like, I don't know. I don't have enough background here about when as an entire people, the Bajoran people chose to get rid of the Jajaras because they had to fight the Cardassians. That's what we're told, and how difficult that was for them to accept. We're talking about billions of people, right? That 5 decades later or so, it's not even like they weren't even thinking about coming back to this until this guy showed up. And then they're like, well, I guess, yeah, you're right. And like they all get like, it's just like the fever dream of it. It's like sort of like you can have your religion, but I want you to sort of maybe live here with me in the real world sometimes too. And we can sort of find balance in respect mutually. What about the Bajorans who aren't religious? There's got to be a few.
They die. They get pushed off the.
They get pushed off that thing, off that.
And the guy and the people who do it laugh about it and are like, "Yeah, I did it, and I'm not sad."
More importantly, do you think Odo was standing beside him on the balcony, or that he landed beside Odo under the balcony? He was definitely beside Odo at one point.
Oh yeah, because Odo could have saved him and didn't.
Odo could turn into a big trampoline and push.
Let me ask you this: Odo is a Bajoran security officer, right? And during this time period, when we're talking specifically about that guy pushing that guy and killing him, and I don't understand how the laws work here when they're switching over to this Dajara, and he's like, "Yeah, I killed him because he needed to be killed because he wasn't following his Dajara," and the whole planet of Bajor is starting to move toward this. He's like, and Cisco's like, get him out of here. And so Odo's like, yep, you just murdered somebody, right? Which I agree with. He should be arrested. But Bajor is now basically saying, this murder is acceptable. Shouldn't Odo follow the Bajoran law?
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Maybe the Vedic Assembly would, but I don't think that the provisional government necessarily would, because they're not a pure theocracy either. Right.
Yeah.
But obviously the church has a major role in their society. To the point where, when there was a power vacuum left, like Kai Wynn kind of stepped in and was both. She was first minister and the Kai. Right. And for a little while until, Cisco says, I got a candidate. His name's Shakar and he's running, and then Shakar took back the political power. So they do have this sort of dual nature to their society where they're like, we live in space, with all these other species, and we're joining the Federation, and there's things that come along with that. But on the other hand, their faith in their religion and their connection with the prophets is very important to them too. And I don't discount any of that, but I think just because this Vedic thinks he's sort of empowered to murder this guy in this episode, I don't think he actually is. I think that they have laws that are outside of just because you think the church thinks you can do this doesn't mean it's okay. If Kai Wynn actually killed somebody on the promenade, I don't think she would get away with it. She kind of did, but without
she did do this in season 1. She literally hired somebody to try to kill Bareil.
Yeah, but she had a patsy though, so she didn't. She had plausible.
Yeah, but they knew, and they continued to treat her like, you know what? She's a religious leader. She's a good person. You know what I mean? They knew she was capable of murder, and they don't really kind of continue to treat her that way. They know she is bad, but I don't know. I feel like Dukat did less bad shit than Kai during the start of the episode, the series, than Kai did. I feel like Dukat was more of a friend of them during the show than Kai Wynn is, but Kai Wynn's actually their ally. It's weird,
They're more amicable towards Dukat, more often, because at least Dukat, well, actually, no, I would say I was going to say that Dukat kind of owns what he is, but he actually doesn't.
No, he doesn't. No, but he's helpful. He's more helpful to you have a problem, okay, and it has to do with Cardassia too. I'll help you. Where Kai Wynn is oh, here we have she only will use an opportunity like this that comes up here where it's oh, this other guy's back and he's saying he's the emissary and they want to switch to Dajara's. And even if she disagrees with the Dajara, she's like, you know what? let's do the Dajaras because that will benefit me. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't actually give a shit about the Dajaras. She only wants it because it's actually gonna give her more power.
Yeah. It would have been interesting to put Kai Wynn in this episode.
Mhm.
I think, like, especially like if they had written in maybe Kai Wynn's not meant to be from the religious order. Like maybe her Dajara was, I don't know, being a seamstress or something.
That would have been great.
You know, and what if she was like, if she had been sort of usurped by this, and if,
What if she had to come and beg Sisko?
Yes,
they should have done that. Beg
Like,
Sisko
sis,
to go talk to the prophets.
The emissary, you know, like if she was the one who convinced Sisko here to do it, I think that would have been a interesting thing. Instead, we get the vision of Kaiopaka instead, who actually, you know, the actress who played her just died, what, like a couple weeks ago or something like that, right? And I think this was her final appearance in Deep Space Nine, I believe.
So fitting, you know,
Camille Saviola, who played, you know, Kaiopaka, but it's not really Kaiopaka. It's kind of the prophets and whatever. But
I would have also liked a scene with Sisko and that priest that killed that guy at the end. Like, guess who's the emissary now? You're in a hole.
Yeah, that would have been great. yeah. What happens? Like, you're going to a Cardassian prison camp. I will make sure of it. You know, if like Sisko had some sort of great, awesome scene or whatever, where he's just rubbed it in his face. He's like, maybe you shouldn't follow religious zealots or like religious waves so fast. You know, like maybe, you know, take a second to see what's actually going on, what's good and what's right, and what's right and what's wrong. You know, I think that's the moral of the episode.
You know what scene that I really like about this Bajoran, this A story, is when Kira tells Sisko, "We would have done anything you asked us as well," and they just sort of look at each other, and I think Sisko is thinking, "I could have poisoned more planets."
He hasn't even done that yet.
Yeah, but he's like, and you're not going to grow any tomatoes on those planets.
I think that was like a moment where he understood how important this role was that he never really took seriously.
Yeah, well, I don't really understand when I'm still unclear about when even the Bajorans truly accepted him as the emissary, because it's really
this episode.
Yeah, but like, when does Kira start thinking of him as the emissary? It's not in season 1 even.
No.
It's not in season 2. So when did it happen?
What's not the question? Really till after this episode.
When did
this is kind of a reboot for they barely bring up the fact that he's the emissary.
Yeah, so there was the episode a little while ago where Sisko went into the coma or whatever, and she was talking to him on the bridge, and she kept calling him emissary there. And you know, so there's been a few times where but yeah, you're right, it's scattered. It only happens in certain episodes when like Kira and Sisko happen to be in a situation where you know, someone might die. You know,
from
basically.
This point on, it comes up a lot more from this point on. It becomes
I think
sorry.
You're talking about the search, part 1 and 2. That's the beginning of season 3. That's when they first get the Defiant, and then he gets in the coma, and she has to tell him the story. But but if you go back just to like an earlier part of season 2, like the Maquis storyline, like I don't think that at that point she thinks that, you know. So it's kind of retconned in here. It's again like it's this thing with Kira. I'm like, who is Kira, you know, and like what's she about? And
I feel like I do feel like they make her too religious. Like I do think Kira, if you look at her character, who she is, she's like this like mercenary rebel that was capable of killing and was like kind of kill at all costs to like, you know, to fight for Bajor and like, you know, get these oppressors out of here.
Yeah, I got
it. But
none of us liked killing. We were fighting for our freedom.
Right. But then on the flip side of the coin, she's like so religious that it affects her decision making for her entire life, which seems so out of place. Like
I know my beliefs make you uncomfortable around me sometimes.
Yeah.
It does, because she fluctuates wildly. Like, she's not religious for a long time. It never comes up, and then all of a sudden she's ready to throw everything away for her religion. Yeah. She's like not religious, not religious, not religious, the most religious, and then not religious again.
Mm-hmm.
So you never really are able to pin her down.
Yeah.
Right. And like it was like this. I know Star Trek Online, which I know is not canon, but you know, like in one like they kind of played around with the Kira character in Star Trek Online, and in one version, like she becomes like a Starfleet captain, which I prefer, and in another version, she actually becomes like the Kai of Bajor, and I think that was actually what they pitched even in like the What We Left Behind documentary. Like if they had done a season 8 like 20 years later, they were going to like lean even further into this with Kira, like making her like a Vedic on the station or something like that. I hate that. I don't like it at all. Like, you know, it's not as a writer what if I was a writer, it's not what I would do with this character. It seems
I would make her a chief of security on the station.
Like that would demotion.
Well, what is she going to be? The first officer forever? Like,
she'll be the commander of the station, probably,
over a Starfleet person.
Or they make her part of Starfleet. They kind of already did it in season 7. Like they put her in a Starfleet uniform, and then they took her right out of it right for the end for some reason. But I thought they should have just left her in the Starfleet uniform in season 7 once they put her in it, and left her in Starfleet.
But if they joined the Federation, then she would probably
they would absorb the militia into Starfleet anyway.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, but they never did that in the show, you know, and
well, they did kind of do it, but they then kind of undid it. Like it was weird.
They didn't have Bajor join, did they?
No, they were going to, and then because he goes, they'll destroy Bajor. He gets like the vision in season 5, and the locusts will come. And so he basically says, don't join the Federation yet, but you know, as soon as the Dominion War is over, you'll be fine too. It's just this is the wrong time, because if you join the Federation, basically you'll be the first target of the Dominion, right? And so by staying he's like, stay like Switzerland and be neutral, you know, and you'll be okay. Which is kind of what happens. Is like they're able to kind of navigate the Dominion War in sort of this neutral spot. You know, which so she has to work for Ducat for a while, and then she has to come back to working with them again. So it's more just a convenience thing. It's more of a practicality thing. But yeah, like I don't know, like Kira. This episode's more about Kira for me than anything.
Yeah, it's like I agree, but it's also about O'Brien. Can we get to the O'Brien of it all in this episode?
What, and let the Jerrys cross the channel?
What? And let the Jerrys cross the channel? Never.
7 more months.
Yeah.
He gives us another 7 months.
7 months
in this episode. And so Keiko comes back from, you know, wherever she was at Bajor, growing plants, smoking weed. Okay. She first comes back and Molly tells her, you know, oh, you're gonna, you know, we're gonna have a brother or whatever. And she's like, where? You know, is this your little doll? Is that what you mean? She's like, no, in there, in mommy's tummy or whatever, right? And I was kind of like, when I first watched the episode, I was just like, was Keiko fooling around? What's going on?
Is that Savar's baby?
Yeah. Is that Savar's baby?
Go back to Bajor and your plants and Sabar. See if I care.
I think he cares
7
now.
more months.
7 more months. Yeah. A lot of this is like about like, what does O'Brien want? Does O'Brien want Keiko to stay on Bajor and hang out with Bashir and drink beer and throw darts? Or does he want his family around? Like, it seems like he wants to hang out with Bashir. Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly what it seems like. Or I think what they're really aiming for, though, is it seems like he doesn't think he can just go. Like, he thinks he has to be around all the time because they're back. But
he feels like a sense of duty.
But then he misses her not being there.
Yeah, he'd rather her not be there. and he misses Bashir being able to put everything down and just go hang out with Bashir. And like literally his quarters are filled with costume after costume of all the ridiculous things he's done with Julian. And they have to clean it up before Keiko gets home. And it like even like Bashir calls it in like his bachelor pad. And it's like, he's a bachelor? I was like, isn't he married? Like, what's going on? Like,
Yes.
I'm confused a little bit with like how.
So is he.
Well, that's I think the whole part is he but like does he loves his family? Like I would say like that's not really up for debate, is it?
I think it is. I think it's up for debate. I think that I think him and Keiko, the more I watch these two, the more I'm like, these two aren't meant for each other. Like, what the hell was going on with this? Like, I think, like with Molly, I guess, he seems to care about Molly. Kind of. He doesn't seem to interact with her a lot. Most of the time she's with Keiko and Keiko's not there. And Keiko is there. Keiko's like, I'm working. I'm grumpy. I'm Keiko.
I'm Keiko. Kevin, what do you think? Do you think he loves his family, or do you think this is kind of like, you know what? He has to get used to his family being around again. And
I think he loves his family, but he was enjoying a little freedom. Enjoying not having to think about anybody else, just do what he wanted to do.
And not only is the freedom gone, but also he's finding out that there's even more responsibility on the way.
Yeah.
Which is,
for Keiko, not for him. She's going to leave again with both of the kids.
He's like a sperm donor, really.
He kind of is a little bit.
Or
I
maybe
don't know.
Who knows?
They have an interesting relationship, that's for sure. And he's the only one out of the major crew that like has kids, of the main cast.
Married. Right.
And is married. Yeah, he's the only one. Bashir's, single. We have Dax is like a gallivanter. Cisco doesn't have Cassidy Yates quite yet. Full time, and then she's gonna go to prison, so that's a whole other thing. And then who else? Odo and Kira, that hasn't happened yet.
Kira's got Shakar, and before that Bareil.
Kira's just hopping from Bajoran dude to Bajoran dude right now, and that's just what's going on there. And then like Jake, I guess. I mean, he's never in an episode. I mean, we see him once a season.
For a main cast member, he's Rom's here more often.
Yeah, Rom's single. Everyone, really isn't attached to anyone except him. And I do think that's also a part of it. I think he has no one to bond with really either about kids and, all that kind of stuff, it's kind of like he's kind of like just got Julian, and Julian's a single dude.
Worf has Alexander.
Well, that's I guess that's a good example is Alexander, but Alexander's not been in the show yet. But they do talk.
Him and O'Brien can connect. I'm like, hey, you know how we have kids that we never see and we barely reference? Let's bond over that. Did you hear Keiko's having a baby, Worf?
Did you hear? Keiko's gonna have another baby.
Now?
No, 7 months.
7 months.
He's like, I'll be taking a trip at that time. I will not be here.
I wish he had started giving the doctor pointers. Why? Instead of being all nervous and like, I'm not going to be around, I wish he had started telling Bashir how to do it, like he did with Odo in Security.
Why is Worf nervous about this?
Because he delivered Molly. They explain it. It's a callback to.
He did fine.
He didn't like it. Remember when she was like, "I have to have the baby." She's like, "You cannot. You must." You must hold
not
it.
a good time, Keiko.
This is not a good time.
Yeah, but like, he doesn't have any fond memories of it. He's just
clearly not. He was like, no. He was like, I'm running. I'm getting on a runabout, and I'm running in the other direction. I'll have to go visit my kid at that time. That's how much I don't want to be around for this.
I did his reaction though initially. Now?
Yeah, he's like, I need to run. I need to get out of here. Yeah, I don't know. I loved Bashir and O'Brien's reaction to Worf too. They just laugh. They're just like, and it's like Bashir has a good line where he's just like, I don't know who's more anxious, Worf or you. It's
Yeah, like I think that was a great callback. The very first time I saw this episode, I was like, I liked the connections, especially with O'Brien and Worf being now reunited on this show after being apart for a couple of years in terms of being sort of on the same cast together. They're those are the two that were on the Enterprise together. They have a lot in common, except when they're getting thrown into holding cells for getting into bar fights over union issues and politics. But but at this point, on the other hand, Worf is not really the best buddies with O'Brien. It's Bashir. Yeah. And they like going to Battle of Britain only with swords.
It's like the Battle of Britain, only with swords.
Yeah. I mean, I do understand where they're going here. Like whoever wrote this episode, who probably had similar things where it's like, I want to hang out with
Espenson.
Jane. Oh, it was a woman who wrote this episode.
Yeah, Jane.
Maybe she had very similar experience where it's like, the father needs some, bonding time with his buddies and kind of wrote that into this subplot.
So Jane Espenson, who wrote this episode, this is the only episode she ever wrote. She had a couple story pitches for Next Gen, but she went on to write for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, and very briefly for Firefly, but actually wrote for Battlestar Galactica under Ronald D. Moore as well, in a whole bunch of episodes in season 3 and 4, including some big ones like The Hub and Deadlock. So interesting. Yeah, she must have been under Ronald D. Moore's wing around this time, and worked for him later on Battlestar, which is one of my favorite sci-fi series ever. And so I don't know, this episode has some great things in terms of, I think it's well written. I think the dialogue is really good in this episode, but the themes of it are bad. The stuff with O'Brien and Bashir and Keiko is fine. It's just the other stuff that's kind of.
Actually, I come to not really like the O'Brien stuff. I laughed and I kind of enjoyed it, but to me, it was a whatever. I don't enjoy it. I won't rewatch it, but I enjoyed some of the themes of the religious stuff because it's very true to how people can be blinded by their faith and how their faith can dictate what they think about lots of horrible things and traditions and things that we should have moved past. But then one guy brings it back up and we go, well, you know what? That guy's got a point, And I think that's kind of what's happening here. We have this guy come back from the past that fits all the prophecies, and then people want to see that to be the truth, and then they just buy it. And then it's just, then all of a sudden this guy's word is more holier than thou. And that happens a lot. The president has that kind of power, the Pope, we see this a lot with figures, even in our world.
Well, he was already a famous figure in their history. He was this. He wasn't just some random Bajoran who happened to find the wormhole. He was already kind of at least in death. He was a notable poet. That Kira explains. Every kid is taught the story. Your poetry as a kid, or your whatever, right? And so he was already. It would be like
Charles Dickens coming back or something like that,
I guess. But yeah, more religious. So it's hard to find a human allegory for him, for what it would be, because we talked about George Washington, but if he was also the Pope, or also
fit the prophecy of being the Messiah, basically, the Jews believe that the Messiah is still yet to return, right? If somebody famous came back that was Jewish, that was a Jewish poet, right? I don't even know who that would qualify as, but came back and fit all the prophecies of being the Messiah, and then was we need to go back to living like they did 2,000 years ago. some people would do it. You know, some Jews would definitely probably, you know, get into that and be fanatical about it. And I think that's kind of what I think they're kind of making the metaphor here for, as like that's not necessarily good. Like, you know, like that can lead to a whole host of problems and in a modern society. Basically.
What do you think about this actor who plays this rival, this other the other emissary, the fake emissary, the Akoram Lan, is that his name?
I don't like him. And I don't think we're meant to like him, but I find him kind of like, I don't know, touchy and kind of like, I don't know, condescending, and I don't know. I'm not a fan of him. I'm not a fan of I'm not a fan of the actor as far as like how he portrayed him. Like, not that it's a bad performance or silted or anything, but it just, I don't know. Like I didn't buy that this guy would have that much power.
Yeah, Richard Libertini, and from what I understand, I'm sure you'll get to in fun facts, but he wasn't the writer's first choice to play this role.
Okay, who was? Do you know?
Yeah, it was supposed to be David Warner.
And who's David Warner?
There are 4 lights, or there are 5 lights, or whatever. You know, the Cardassian who tortures Picard in the 2-parter. Also, he played a human in Star Trek V. On that, he was the human ambassador on Nimbus 3. The you know how he was like he was like the Terran guy, because there was like the Klingon ambassador, the Romulan woman, and then there was the human guy. That's David Warner. And so he was meant to play this role, and apparently his wife was like, "No, we're going on vacation. They have to get someone else." And so they got this guy instead.
Is he married to Keiko?
Yeah, I think he was married to Keiko.
He's from he's most famously, I think, from Titanic. He's like the guy that, yeah, like he's the guy when Rose is going to jump out the back of the ship and then Jack saves her. He's like the guy. He's like the thug that like the rich guy.
Billy Zane's bodyguard guy. Pretty much.
That's to me what he's most famous for. Tron as well. But yeah, I don't know. Not really a fan of the performance, really. I guess it wasn't written for him, and it's not his fault. But I don't know. I think
stuffy and boring as every other Bajoran we've seen.
Well, Irish Stephen Bear wanted kind of an opponent for Sisko. I don't think Sisko got an opponent here.
No.
If that's what they were going for, that's not what we got. We got sort of like, this guy shows up and he's like, "Can I be emissary?" And Sisko's like, "I guess. I don't want to be it anyway," right? But that's
the worst part. That is the worst part of the episode for me, is the fact that Sisko, like that whole scene with Dax, where it's like, "I guess you're off the hook," and Sisko's like, "Yeah." And then he meets Kaiopaka, and then like Bashir's like, "I can stop it if you want." He's like, "Yeah, do it." You know, like everything that Sisko does, it's just like, he doesn't want this. He doesn't give a shit about Bajor. He says he does, but all his actions say otherwise. And, you know, and then it's not until basically Bajor's going to turn itself into like chaotic mess where he's like, "Yeah, I gotta step in."
He's got too many cellular peptides in his brain or something, right?
Yeah, like just everything with him. Basically, at the end of the episode, he basically becomes the emissary again because he is the emissary. But at the same time, he kind of just like accepts it. He's just like, "You know what, I am, so I'll do it." You know, and I think that's a missed opportunity in this episode. Like, I don't really like the way they get to the end result whatsoever. You know, it's basically like, I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna. And you know, it's like a kid, like, "You have to eat your vegetables," and he's like, "Fine."
He's like, "I'll have my neural peptides."
It is a cellular peptide cake with mint frosting.
That's right.
With mint frosting.
Those are cellular peptides, not neural peptides. That's
you know, peptide bismo. I don't know. Yeah, so like it's not a fun episode for me. We should talk a little bit about the scene with the Bajorans, where they're like with the Prophet, sorry.
Yeah.
Where they both emissaries go to talk to the Prophets. And the prophets kind of give the lowdown of like, yeah, like I don't know, like you are not of Cisco's time, and we saved you because he was injured. Like that was the weirdest part for me. He was injured. Really? How many other people were injured? And you know, was it just because
Yeah,
he was in a ship and he flew into the wormhole?
I think
and
like 10 million people died during the occupation. You didn't seem too concerned with that, but
they
because
don't
he
care
happened
unless
to-
they don't care unless you come into their house.
Yeah, basically. But they seem to also care about Bajor, and they locked the Pa race on Bajor in the fire caves, right, or something. And I don't know. And they kind of arranged for Cisco to be born. Screw these prophets. Like they are the worst, Jeff.
They are linear.
It limits them.
You're limited.
I really like the concept of the prophets and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when they have certain scenes with what you just played, where they have all the different characters and they all act with like that creepy look on their face.
Like they're
And
just
they are-
confused.
Yeah, they're confused and they're like, "You're stupid." They kind of look at you like you're stupid. They're like,
I think they're stupid. Like they
You don't
think
have to
that
take it
like
personally, Dave.
because they're just like, well, they're limited and they don't get it because they're linear. But then on the other hand, like they don't know the future, Jeff. You told me that like things aren't written yet, and so it's like, well, what are you? Do you know the future or not? What's your plan? Do you have a plan or not? They're like, well, we actually sent this guy to kind of kickstart Cisco into becoming the emissary. So the prophets are like the writers.
they're kind of like the Watchers in like Marvel. Like that's kind of what they are. Like they don't interfere unless they absolutely have to, but they basically like to watch. And every now and then, if somebody comes and sees them, they're like, "Hey," and people are like, "Hey, yourself," and they're like, "Okay, are you gonna leave now?" Like they don't really want you to hang out. Like they're basically like Cisco has to beg them in this episode. He's like, "I want to learn more," and like they're like, "Okay,
Bye.
cool, bye." Yeah, like that's kind of how they act, and it's like that. The people like are begging them for answers, and they're like, "We're not going to give them to you because you're limited." Basically. Like, what do you want us to tell you? 10,000 years of history in a 2-minute conversation? Not going to happen. And so they don't even bother, basically.
Well, yeah, the thing too is like his role as the emissary basically comes from this place. Like he has to accept that the prophets are benevolent, right? And I don't even know if they have enough information to really assess that. Like, it turns out, I guess, that the prophets are like the angels, and then the Pa race are like the demons, and
They're not benevolent, though. I don't believe at all. They're not. They believe in self-preservation. That's 100% true. There's a few episodes where they deal with that. The Reckoning, when they zap all the Dominion out of the wormhole. Like there's a few times where the prophets intervene basically for self-preservation. They don't care about the Bajorans, they don't even really care about the Cisco. They just want the Cisco to do what he's supposed to do.
what's that? Defeat the Pa race?
Basically, yeah. It's at the end of he needs to all the Pa race go into the cot and then jump into the fire kit, like at the end of the series. But they need that to happen. Without that happening,
they're using them.
And there was also the chance during the Reckoning, if Cisco had let Jake die, then that would have worked too, because Kira was about to kill Jake in the Reckoning, and then Cisco intervenes, I believe, or it's Kai Wynn. Does Kai Wynn intervenes? Yeah. Kai Wynn intervenes and stops it, but Cisco was willing to have his son die to destroy the Pa race right then and there, and that what occurs. But then that's when Cisco has to sacrifice. So basically, Cisco sacrifices himself for Jake by the end of the series, in my opinion. That's kind of how it works out.
For Jake.
Yeah, because in the Reckonings, Kira's about to kill him. Kira, as the prophets are about to kill Jake.
Well, he was willing to risk Jake's life. He didn't know Jake would. He was like, no, the prophets will protect him.
Yeah, they weren't. they weren't going to. They were gonna. I think Jake would have died there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the prophets definitely didn't care about Jake at all.
No. He's not the Cisco.
Or Cisco, really. Like they even they created him to use him as a tool.
That's what I'm telling you, man. Like these prophets suck. They are not the Bajor.
No, they're not. They're of the wormhole.
They are of the wormhole.
I don't think they're of Bajor at all. I think they're just like Bajor is the closest place, and they just happen to watch it, and they've had people fly in and out of them.
They like to send their little orbs down for whatever reason.
They're like yeah. We're from Hawaii too.
They're from Hawaii too. They like to send their convicts there, like it's Australia, because the Pa race are the same species, right? As the prophets, yeah. They're just like kind of another faction.
Yeah, the ones that turned bad or like didn't see it's like one side of the same coin, or right. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I see it, but I'm not a big fan of them either because I don't think they really explain themselves very, very often. Like basically they're just like, this is what
they work
in
mysterious ways, though.
Yeah, and like that's what you say. Like Kira disappoints you in this episode. Cisco disappoints me in this episode, especially when he said that line. I was like, I just rolled my eyes. I was just like, are you friggin' kidding me? Like he becomes so blind. Like Kira hasn't talked to the prophets directly. Cisco has multiple times. And he never seems to come away from it going like what we just decided, what we just were discussing. Like they kind of suck. Like they're not they don't look out for the best interests of really anybody other than themselves. And because they are like this higher entity to Cisco, I don't feel like Kirk or Picard or even Janeway would treat the prophets like Cisco treats the prophets. Like Cisco treats them like gods, like higher entities.
Eventually, yeah, he starts to embrace. This is really the kind of the turning page where he thinks of them less as aliens, and he's kind of using this role as the emissary because he's trying to straddle this line. His mission is to bring Bajor into the Federation, so his role as the emissary is integral to that. And he kind of knows it, but he has this reluctance because he doesn't want to be a religious icon, but he kind of sees that it's necessary,
right?
And here's where he actually starts to lean into it. But I think that like this is I don't know, like I was never fully comfortable with it either. I kind of often am on the side of like these Starfleet admirals he talks about, and then he says, right, I did what they wanted, and it all blew up in my face.
Yeah,
and now, Bajor is going down this other path where they're discriminating people if they don't follow Dajaras. They're going to be exiled here, And I'm like, well, maybe they don't belong in the Federation if they can be so thrown off by just this emergence of this 200-year-old guy who thinks that hey, we got to go back to the old ways.
Thrown off by the new emissary and thrown off the upper level of the promenade. You will get both in this new Bajor.
Betakamura.
Yeah. Akoram Lon is he's a piece of work.
Sucks.
It kind of sucks. How many Bajoran episodes are actually good though? Like every time there's a few of them, and this is not even a Bajoran episode. It's a Prophets episode, really, in a lot of ways.
As far as Bajoran episodes go, this is one of the best.
I don't know. I prefer some of the like the Kira episodes, like where like we've talked about, like the one from season 1.
The old man?
Yeah,
the old man. The old man one's better than this. There's a few Kira episodes where she goes back and like talks to her old buddies or whatever. The Reckoning's better than this. Like, yeah, but I see what you're saying.
The stuff with like her old Shakar people and like the stuff with the resistance, I find interesting. The one where she had to go talk the old man off the moon was good. Like looking back
that
on episodes,
was a good performance by him and by her, but I don't know if that was a good episode. I
think it's better than this one.
No, I was surprised by this one, actually. I like this more than I thought I did.
Yeah. I didn't. It's just like, I don't like these Bajoran sometimes, like I find them maybe it's because we're always here and we're always dealing with them, versus like in the other Star Trek shows where they move around and,
Do you know what? Do you know what I actually think comes up a lot, at least in my head? I'm always like, I like the Cardassians way more. Like, I'm like, if I had to choose between like what civilization I'd rather live in, I'd probably choose the Cardassians because I just like their vibe better. Like I find the Bajorans just incessantly blinded by the religion, whereas I find the Cardassians blinded by like their duty and they're more soldieristic ambition, and they're more like, but they're more like to the point, and they're more like the Germans in a lot of ways,
They're
like
ruthless.
They're ruthless, like German people, like the they're more in that like vein of like blunt and to the point, and
it's a pragmatism rather than religion. It's
right.
What is going to work. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Yeah. Whereas like the Bajorans are like, I don't know, I'll jump off this cliff and I might survive because I have faith, and then it works. They're like amazing, and like I'm like, I don't know. That for me,
I
it's
wouldn't
just
want to live in either of these societies, but if I had to pick one, I pick the Bajorans, but I would not wear the earring, and I would not be about this malarkey with the prophets.
That's not embracing the whole thing, though. Like, like you would have, like, you have to kind of take it all.
If I were still a human, I'd rather live on Bajor.
Oh yeah, remember, I'm not saying all right, weather-wise, like I'm not talking about that.
Not the weather, no. Like the Cardassians are gonna rip out your molar when you're 10. They're gonna put you through psychographic training as a child. Like there are bad things to Cardassian society.
Absolutely. The judicial system's atrocious. You're guilty without a trial, basically. All that stuff's terrible in the Cardassians.
But the nature of this show, Deep Space Nine, is that we're constantly brought into these aspects of the Bajoran culture because that's where we are. And they have this whole religious thing, and we're all atheists, so it's kind of not great for us either, or a lot of other viewers.
I'm okay I'm okay with religious stuff or whatever. I just I'm more into like, all right, Kira's always been portrayed to me as a spiritual person. She's religious too, but she's more like about spirituality, which I'm totally okay with. If you believe in God or believe in spirituality, that's totally up to you, and I think we all have that somewhat innately within us. Whereas where I get a problem with it is where it becomes you have a figureheads and you have prophets, or you have certain religious figures like we have in this episode that come back in time and decree everyone must live the way it was 200 years ago, and everyone just follows suit without question, without real debate, they just do it. That part of religious, I cannot understand. I do not get it. And I think Odo is kind of like the voice of the audience in this episode, and we only get it for like one scene, but he's basically like, this is ridiculous. Like this, like Kira, this is like a walking contradiction. And then the show tells us, shove your contradiction up your ass, basically. Like Kira's line is, the thing about faith, if you don't have it, you can't understand it. And if you do, no explanation is necessary. Oh, really? No explanation is necessary when an old man pushes a Vedic off the second? No explanations necessary, Kira?
Also, that's set up as like this poignant moment, and all I can think is, you just said you were stupid. Like,
yeah, you just said you're naive. All that
says.
It's a nonsense argument she's giving, right?
Yeah.
Like, basically, it's like, fuck off. I like my religion. I don't have to explain it. That's really all it is. It's like, it's what I can't explain it to you. It's just, it is, because it's not logical. It's just it's what's important to her. And fair enough. Who am I to tell her not to? But the fact when she can't she can't see the writing on the wall. She can't see good from bad. She's completely driven by it. Like her standing as a character, is kind of diminished to me because, like, we think about a lot of times these other characters like Worf and others who have to kind of go against their culture, go against their traditions, and stand for themselves and think for themselves and have critical thinking, independent thinking. Like, that's why I'm disappointed in her. That's why that's my whole thesis of tonight.
Let me ask you this, because we had this a couple weeks ago or whatever. Do you have the same disappointment in Worf actually choosing to kill his brother Kern? Do you have this? He was going to. Like, he was going to kill him. He was literally going to murder him.
Basically, for his religion.
His religion.
Yes, I do. And I think Worf was disappointed in himself by the end of the episode. He kind of came around and goes, you know what? I did it because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, but he's like, I don't agree with it. It's not right. It's not honorable, and I really shouldn't have gone through with it, but I did because Kern guilted me hard, and I thought it was my duty, and whatever. But I think you see growth in him, and I think that that's true in a few other. And I'm not saying like Kira shouldn't have her religion or whatever, although
she should be questioning her religion though. She should be questioned. Like Odo literally like lays it out for her in the best way possible, and he's really nice about it too. He basically is like, "This is contradictory to everything you've said before," and now what? Like one guy shows up and it like fits your little prophecy, and you're like all on board with it, and she's like, "Yeah, I am. Screw you. Fuck off," and it's like. I think the disappointment, I can understand where you're coming from, Dave, is that she should be questioning this. Cisco's having a hard time questioning it because he is trying to straddle this line between Federation and Emissary and Bajor and what he wants and what is right and what is moral and all these different things. And there's a few scenes where he's like uncomfortable with it. And I get it. I understand why he is. But at the same time, it's like, you should have certain principles that you cannot go back on, regardless.
I thought she should have also been. She should have been, if she's really a true believer and she, whatever, she should have been fighting for Sisko to stay as emissary. But she rolls right over for this too.
Well, because it fits her book. Like the Bible said so, and so therefore it's true. And the thing is that in this world, they know God exists. Their gods exist.
But she doesn't accept Kai Wynn for the, she knows she's crooked.
Yeah, but she does accept her. That's the problem. Like she literally, like that. This is the whole problem with the Bajorans is like they're willing to look past personal things and like just be like the religion trumps it. And I think it's like I don't like the Bajorans for that reason. Like almost alone. Like they have this like holier than thou kind of.
Well, they're diverse
viewpoint.
People too. Like I think like we're kind of looking them all through Kira, but she's one person. I think like remember like what's his name, the guy who's kind of like Odo's surrogate dad, that Dr. Melora guy, Dr. Mora. He doesn't even wear the earring, and I always got the impression maybe he's a non-religious Bajoran. And so maybe he's different. Maybe he would have a different point here. Maybe his Dajara was something else. I think that this could have been a more like if they'd done this now in like if Deep Space Nine was produced today, I think this would have been a longer plot line. Maybe a season-long plot line, right? Like how this.
Oh God!
But it all got crammed into 40 minutes here or 45 minutes. I think almost as a disservice because I think it's a complex thing. I think that how this would have torn apart billions of Bajorans, I think is kind of yada yada here, and is kind of all fixed up by the end of it a little too easily.
Well, like okay, this Akoram Lan guy, he keeps saying like throughout the episode, this is what the prophets want. This is why they brought me back. And like Sisko says to him like twice, I think, how do you know that? He's
like, I used to be the emissary, and they never told me that.
Yeah, he's like, and they wouldn't tell me that. I know them; they're a bunch of jerks. And he goes, I just know because why else would they bring me back? That's what he keeps saying. Why else? Right? He doesn't actually know, but people fall in line because it fits the book or the prophecy.
I love it's the one thing that he zeroes in on too, that this guy zeroes in on, the Dajaras. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Nothing else about Bajoran society bothers him.
Except that, because I get it. Why? Because he's a poet, and it's like, what you mean that this guy that's in my Dajar is not a poet? He's a soldier. Well, that's not him living his full life, And then now everyone must live the way I lived. That's basically what he's doing.
What if Kira had been good at sculptures too?
I love that she isn't. It's the best part. It's like, yeah, you suck at this. And it's like, you're supposed to be a first officer. Do your job. Like, what are you doing? Stop it.
I would have loved if she was brilliant at it and still found it boring.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was like the best at it. Like could really impressed Akoram Lan. And she was like, yeah, but you know what?
She's it's like, not like something to these Dajaras, but I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I like
What do you think
blowing
Shax's
things up.
Dajara was?
Oh,
Pottery. An art.
Pottery, yeah, pottery. Okay. Have we said what we wanted to say about this episode? Do you have anything else, Dave, that you kind of want to put out there?
No, I've said all there is to say.
I think
No.
we said more than I thought we would.
Yeah, I think we said what we needed to say about this episode. Let's go on to some fun facts. Okay, so the line that I mentioned earlier about that's the thing about faith. If you don't have it, you can't understand it. If you do, no explanation is necessary. Guess what? That's a paraphrase of a quotation from St. Thomas Aquinas, which reads, quote, "To one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible." That sounds like a dick thing to say.
Oh yeah.
Or religious nonsense. Like it's just circular thinking.
If you don't think like me, you're never going to understand the way I think. Just basically what he's saying.
If you were cool, you'd get it, but since you're not cool, you don't get it.
You don't get it. Smoke some more weed, and then maybe you'll get there.
Try harder.
Try harder. Have more faith. Okay. This episode is considered to be a two-part of the Emissary trilogy, with part one being Destiny, and part 3 being Rapture.
What was Destiny?
I wonder which one. We'll have to look at how we rank these 3 episodes. I'll have to get them when we get to Rapture.
Destiny, we were kind of neutral on. It was season 3. We collectively gave it a 6.9.
Okay.
I was the lowest on it.
Because Kira probably disappointed you in that one. Bashir and O'Brien tease Worf about when he delivered Molly in the TNG episode Disaster. Worf is so uncomfortable about this that he schedules leave so he will not be present when she is due, just to make sure it does not happen again. Yeah, but then she's going to be a preemie, and then,
would have been
screwed.
awesome if Worf had delivered, like it'd been Worf and Kira delivering.
When they wrote this in, was not Nana, was she pregnant by this point?
She might have been, but like maybe just barely.
Maybe, yeah.
7 more months.
Because they did say that this is when a few episodes ago. This is when they started getting to get together. Alexander Siddig and Nana. Okay. Quark reminisces about a Ferengi children's book he read to young Nog, quoting the line, "See Brack acquire, acquire Brack acquire." This is a nod to Dick and Jane, a series of books designed to teach small children to read, which famously used the phrase "see spot run, run spot run."
Oh. What do you think about that?
It's not fun with Dick and Jane, but it's close.
Spot.
The ship flown by Akorum Lawn is the same model used in the D69 episode Explorers, which is the Jake and Cisco episode, The Late Ship, which is, they brought that back here in this episode. He was in a light ship 200 years ago. No wonder the Bajorans
bushy
suck.
goatee episode.
The only bushy.
Why?
Yeah. The Bajorans suck.
He was. I thought that's not following his Dajara. How did he make a spaceship?
Yeah, that's a good point. You someone should have brought that up to him. Hey, why were you, Mr. Poet, in a friggin' light ship by yourself?
I want to be inspired by the space.
This is the first time it is mentioned that the O'Briens are having another baby. Do they ever have this baby?
Yeah, it's Kirayoshi.
Mostly.
But remember, the baby goes from Keiko into Kira.
Oh, right. Because
and then O'Brien and Kira, the relationship that should have happened but didn't.
So basically, yeah, I bet you they found out she was pregnant, and they said, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do." The only couple really on this show is the O'Briens. So Keiko's gonna get pregnant, and then we're gonna switch it over to Kira. Like they already had that planned out. I think after they, like right when they wrote this episode, like they knew that's what they were gonna do. That's my theory. Anyway.
Well, I'm sure because Rosalind Chow wasn't pregnant, so I would assume that this whole storyline is
for that.
because of the pregnancy.
Yeah. The closing credits of this episode feature a number of changes from previous episodes. Ron Wilkinson is replaced by Fritz Zimmerman as set designer, and Herman Zimmerman is changed from production designer to visual consultant. And his position in the credits is switched with art director Randy McIlvin. The reason for this was due to a number of Deep Space Nine crew helping out on the production of Star Trek First Contact.
Okay, so they were busy.
Yeah. This episode marks the first time the prophets say, "We are of Bajor. You are of Bajor," to Sisko. This statement initiates a thread in the overall plot of the series that would not yet be explained for 62 episodes in the premiere of season 7. Thank God for that.
Well, yeah, and like season 4, it just feels so different than everything we've watched, right? Like there's not just the fact that Worf is here. It's all, not just the fact that Sisko's bald now and is and became a captain at the very end of season 3. It's like this show just feels so different from this point. Basically until Dax dies, and then it kind of there's kind of like that last era in the final season. But I think from season 4 through season 6, like this is the golden era of the show, and this is almost like a season 1B. It's like,
yeah, I used to have fonder memories of season 4, but there are some like slower episodes in season 4. Maybe there will be in 5, but I feel like 5 is going to be a better season than 4.
We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Quark's statement about everything babies handle goes straight into their ears is one of the few times that a Ferengi says ears instead of lobes.
Oh yeah.
They don't stick things in their mouth, because humans would stick everything in their mouth, and then
Ferengi big ears makes sense. This is Camille Savol's final appearance as Kaiopaka, as previously mentioned. Okay, and that's it for fun facts. Let's get into ratings.
No. All right, let's get into the ratings. Just make this. No, it was actually we'll do that. Okay, you guys can see that. Jeff, start us off.
Oh, I think I'm like a 4 on this one.
Yeah, I'm going 2.
Oh my god. I'm giving this a 7. I like this a lot more than I thought.
Do we have any other ratings here? Oh, Ashley's giving it a 4. Well,
yeah, me and Ashley think alike. There were some okay things, but it's not a pass for me.
Didn't change the average at all. Yeah, I think 2 is almost too generous.
Look how much we talked about, though. There's so much here.
There are things to talk about. I agree with that.
Yeah, just frustrating though.
7 more months.
7 more months of this stuff. Yeah, this is my least favorite episode of season 4. It's one of my least favorite episodes of the whole series, and it's all because Kira is a disappointment. What we got next, Jeff? What's next week?
That's a good question. What do we have next? I think it's a good one. It's Rules of Engagement. When Worf destroys a civilian shuttle during an engagement with the Klingons, an extradition hearing is held to see if he must face charges. This is one of the best episodes. This is where Avery Brooks puts on his lawyer hat and goes to battle with a Klingon lawyer. LeVar Burton directed. This is actually one of my favorite episodes, so I'm glad that they followed up this week's episode.
I'm with you. We have Ron Canada playing the for who's not from Canada, playing the Klingon lawyer guy, the advocate guy. But it's got like this amazing like these flashbacks, like where they're doing the reenactments, like because O'Brien has to get on the stand and Dax has to get on the stand at one point, and then all just how they're kind of like doing things around us. It stands apart from most Star Trek episodes in that way, and I really, really love that episode. I'm really looking forward to talking about that one next week. I will be more positive, I guarantee it, than I was here for whatever the hell. I didn't even say this name of this episode. Accession?
Yeah, Accession.
Why wasn't that in Fun Facts? What the hell does the title even mean? Wasn't fun.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't fun, and it wasn't a good fact. Yeah, and next week they wear all their. We have to see lots of dress uniforms too, so we'll get that.
Oh, I love those dress uniforms.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I can only take so much Bajorans. I'm so glad this show wasn't the Bajoran show. Like, I'm glad you need the odd episode, but man, there's too much. More Cardassian stuff would have been better.
And like I said, the stuff
And
with
we
like
do
the
get more of that.
Wait, do you know who just died too, Jeff? Was the guy who remember the guy from like the Shakar Resistance cell? We're gonna see him again. He's gonna come up in a future episode.
Like the bigger guy with the goatee.
Yeah, the guy with the goatee. He's got no arm.
Yeah.
Right.
He died.
That's he just died recently. I can look up his name, but that's Piney, Jeff, from Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, Piney.
Yeah.
I never recognized him. Yeah, I guess that is it. It's him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Piney.
No,
that sucks that he died. Good actor.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well,
yeah. So what else we have on Live Long and Podcast and Super Band of Bros podcasting coming up, Dave? What do we got?
We're busy, Jeff. We're really busy around here. Monday nights, we continue to finish up our rewatch of the Star Trek the Original Series. We watched, now 78 out of the 79 episodes have been watched and rated and discussed on our podcast with our dad, Ted, and Jody Simpson and Adam Woodward and Ashley Millard. And you were on it for a while too, remember?
Yeah, I was on a couple.
Yeah,
And
Jeff too. And so next Monday is the finale, the 79th episode. We didn't watch them in order, and we're going to be talking about all our yesterdays, which is kind of the one where there's like this library in the past or something. There's like a librarian guy, and they kind of go into this cave in like the past. It's a really interesting one. So that's going to be our final episode. We're probably going to do some kind of a wrap up after that, but when that wraps up, we're starting Star Trek Enterprise rewatch podcast, which will be kicking up, I guess, in 2 or 3 weeks when that finally wraps up. After we started that around the pandemic time, the Star Trek the Original Series, around the same time we started this one, but there's been just way more to go through. And so, check that out. Also on Thursdays, it's not this week, right? No, it's not this week. So this Thursday at 8:00, we'll be talking about the next installment of Star Trek Prodigy, which this will be technically episode 4. I've been covering that with Davin Skellhorn and Jessica Chan, the new Nickelodeon children's show, which also just got renewed for its second season already. So there's going to be at least 2 seasons of Star Trek Prodigy. In 1 week, starting November 18th, every Thursday, we're also going to be covering Star Trek Discovery Season 4, as that will be premiering. I'll be talking about that with Adam Woodward and Michael Chan. So double duties on Thursdays as of next week. Also, later this month, I'll start on November 27th. We're going to be doing Star Trek Radio Theater, which we haven't. It's been on hiatus for quite some while, where we do the reenactments. We're going to be doing the Star Trek Lower Decks episode called Wej Douche, which is a Klingon phrase which translates to 3 ships. That was where they had the Vulcan lower deckers, the Klingon lower deckers. All kind of correspond near the end of season 2. We'll be doing that on Saturday the 27th, and we're looking to do Star Trek First Contact on December 19th in the radio theater world. Working on those posters and getting some visuals that we can show. Almost there with those. Also, check out Super Mater Brothers Podcasting, our other channel, where we talk about stuff that's not related to Star Trek, including, we just on Sunday, we talked about Eternals, the new Marvel movie, and we've been talking about all the Marvel content since it's at least been coming out in 2021 and beyond, starting with WandaVision. So you want to check out our review on Eternals, go ahead, or anything else we've talked about over there. Plus, we talk about reality shows like Survivor, which we'll be doing tomorrow night, every Wednesday at 9:30. We talk, you and I and Jaemeel, we talk about the newest installment of Survivor. I think we're on to our 7th episode tomorrow. We're getting into the jury phase of the show, so if you like Survivor, check that out. Plus, we talked about earlier this year, Big Brother season 23. We're on the Canadian side, Big Brother Canada 9. and we'll probably be looking ahead to Big Brother Celebrity come this winter. So lots going on Super Mario Brothers podcasting. And then Trivial Debates, our other channel where we argue about movies, TV, sports, whatever, history, in a game show format. We just did a Halloween themed episode. We did that on the last Sunday of every month. I was hosting that one last week. So we'll be doing one around November 28th, presumably. I haven't put that all together yet, but check out our other channel, Trivial Debates. And what have I forgotten? Oh, yeah. And also check out Davin Skellhorn's podcast, Locutors of Trek. They just talked about all the relationships of Star Trek. So make sure to check those things out. And Eamon's podcast, my son Eamon, he's got a podcast called Let's Talk About Fighting Games. They have a new installment that came out on October 23rd, which was called The Outdated One. So I think that's plugging everything. That's what we got going on, Jeff.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Dave. A quick update on Eternals. Kirby Sinclair, not a fan. He went and saw it. He said, too many characters, not enough time. It dragged. That was his take. And I tend to agree. It did drag a bit. But I still kind of enjoyed it. It was a 7 out of 10. Better than Accession. But not better than I probably called it Ascension at the beginning of this thing. But you know what? It worked. It kind of looks like Accession. You know, like an access. I don't know.
Axion.
Accession. It's like French. Accession. Okay. That's it for season 4, episode 17, Accession. Join us next week for Rules of Engagement. For Jeff Mader, Dave Mader, and the Bajoran worker, Kevin Millard. This has been Deep Space Nine at 9ish.
7 more months.